Hello, I'm here with Doug to talk about America's King and many other things. It is Friday, February 21, 2025. I got mostly politics today. Of course, it's very exciting, uh, and not in a good way. And the first section I have is Doge, Musk destroying the government, shutting down everything. They now have gained access to the cybersecurity agency. So the 19-year-old known as Big Balls is now listed as staff at CISA, and they're expected to, I think, this is what I've been waiting for because CISA has been extremely useful for people in the information security community with a lot of useful guidance, but they dared to say that foreign actors did not hack and modify the 2020 elections. So I expected the Trump administration to destroy them completely, and we'll see. Um, Also, Doge had been bragging about how much money they saved, and this has been revealed to be completely fake. Claim to have canceled a contract and saved $8 billion, but that contract was in fact only $8 million. And they have been claiming the entire value of contracts when they cancel contracts that have like an 8-year lifespan where 6 years has already gone by and all the money has already been spent and so on. It seems to be just completely wildly exaggerated. And then when speaking publicly, Musk just claims numbers that are much bigger than even the lies that his team is publishing. So he's learning from Trump, just make up a number and then just increase the number each time you talk about it. Uh, and Dahlia,
Sam, that works.
it does work. As we were talking about last time, the trick is just to say it in a public forum like Twitter, and then the gullible Republicans will see it bounce from like three different news sources, and they will regard that as having been corroborated. And apparently, they don't notice. I mean, I've noticed right from the start of Trump can say something and then contradict himself two sentences later, and his Republican voters don't notice or care. So they don't seem to employ any logic.
Right.
I think they're like a dog. They just get the emotional meaning of what he's saying. There's a famous Far Side cartoon where the guy's talking to the dog, and all the dog hears is blah, 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 ginger, blah, 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 ginger. They're getting like the emotional charge of, I'm on the team and he's the powerful leader, and not
Yeah.
worrying about any of the facts or anything. Um, and so Dahlia Lithwick, a very famous commentator and I think a lawyer, uh, wrote an article which actually made a lot of sense figuring out what's going on with Doge because Doge is a protection racket. And now that she mentions it, it does seem very plausible. I mean, this is how they work. They cancel everything. For example, I just heard on the Daily Beans that they just changed all government credit cards to a maximum limit of $1 today. So everybody just can't do anything. This is my intention. And he said, our system is we'll just turn off everything and then see who complains. So the point is, you turn off everything, and now everybody has to be a special case. They have to come to you and beg for you to give them any privileges, and then you have to make a deal and get something from them to get those privileges. So that's a protection racket. That's what that is. Uh, you you remove all established procedures, and this is what I've been living under at City College all these years. I noticed there's never any way to do anything. There are no actual procedures. Like if you need a key to get in a room, there is nobody to talk to. There is no form. If you need anything, you have to go find someone and get them to do it to you as a special favor to get anything done. And that there, I think it's just because there's no organization at all, no government at all. But here it is a protection racket. They turn off everything and then like come wait for you to come and beg for a favor. So also NIST. The National Institute of Standards is going to fire 500 probationary standards, so they're destroying that along with every other government agency. Anyway, that's where Doge is. Uh, what have you got, Doug?
Well, let's go over. I got a couple politics stories, but Elon is in team and Trump are laying off over 7,000 IRS agents.
Right.
And what's interesting about this, if you read the headlines, you can read anywhere from hundreds to 6,700, depending on what headline you pick up.
Yeah.
So it's interesting. We can't even get the story straight on this.
Well, they don't actually explain anything or write or document anything. I mean, they just take like a teenager, put him in charge, and he just cancels all the accounts.
Yeah, yeah, I
And
understand,
yeah,
but how do we get off on a magnitude of 10?
I'm sure they're just getting estimates from people, like
Yeah,
number
okay.
of probationary staff or something, because they aren't telling anybody or getting any approvals or having any plan. You're just sort of guessing from what they did to the last agency, I think.
Yeah, okay. So anyway, we got that. And about a week ago or several days ago, there was a Delta Airlines crash that kind of hit the news, right?
Yeah,
Where the plane flipped over. Incredibly, you got to hand it to the pilots as well as the flight crew for getting everybody off the plane with no loss of life. And
yeah,
I still think we don't know what the exact cause is. There's claim it was gust of wind, heavy landing, something like that. Too early to tell. We need
yeah.
to look at the evidence. But Delta is already offering $30,000 per passenger per settlement.
Yeah, I think they'd be lucky to get away with that little. I mean, that's a pretty serious one.
Yeah, yeah. So, some people might bite on that.
Yeah, well, and we have so many crashes. I mean, when my friends were afraid a couple of weeks ago, I said, well, Trump couldn't have ruined the airline safety already, but maybe he has. I understand he did send termination letters to all the FAA traffic controllers, and a bunch of them did accept. So maybe he did actually manage to make air travel unsafe in just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, well, this leads into another story that I'm goes on my list here. And it is interesting what's happening in general in aviation, including general aviation, meaning small planes. And we've seen a number of large plane crashes. The one in DC with the helicopter
Yeah,
and the American Airlines, right?
yeah,
It was yeah, right.
and a couple small ones too.
And some small ones. And
Something
there's
like
some other
six,
ones.
something like six accidents in the last month.
Yeah, and what's interesting is analysts that investigate these um, accidents, and some of these were with airports without a tower, which
Right.
there are many of them, and these are smaller airports for smaller planes,
Yeah.
and they usually you broadcast or communicate that you're coming in for a landing. And so there was another plane crash that took place where one plane actually ran into the back of another plane, essentially.
Yeah.
Super fast plane following behind a Cessna, which is a kind of slowpoke plane. And the faster plane, everybody perished on that, and the Cessna came in for a landing. So the question is that you're asking, Sam, why is this happening? And what we're seeing is, at least in general aviation, people are taking shortcuts or not following the rules. They think the rules don't apply to them. Um, we're seeing where they're not following standard traffic patterns when entering in to take a landing. People who are untrained or have had minimal training are overestimating their abilities, their capabilities.
But is this somehow happening more than it used to?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so it may have to do with just the general dysfunction of our society, people feeling like upset by all the politics, I suppose.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but the rules don't apply to me, is what it appears.
Well, and I mean that Doge reminds me of this, and I think the right now feels emboldened to be much more outrageous than they used to.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I remember when I was a teenager, they taught me as a physicist, you are the king of scientists, and everybody else is just an idiot. Biologists are just stupid, and chemists are just stupid, and everybody that was born before 1900 just lived in a miasma of religious lies, and you are the superior race that knows the truth. I remember believing that when I was like 17. And they seem to have the same sort of arrogance on the right now. We are here to take over the country and fix everything and trample all those inferior beings that were like Democrats and woke and stuff.
Yeah. And, Sam, to a degree, I've been seeing this a lot in the Bay Area and social media posts, how terrible drivers are. And this is where people are going 100 miles an hour down the freeway.
I've seen that
And
for last 5 years, ever since the pandemic, I've seen that.
yeah, and so it's kind of the rules don't apply to me, they
Yeah,
apply to you. And
yeah.
then if you're going slow, meaning you're going the speed limit, they start flashing the lights or honking at you. And I've had that happen to me. So, this is happening in aviation.
Yeah.
And the other thing that's happening in aviation is a lot of pilots are retiring. And what they've done is they've shortened, and we saw this with the with that helicopter that crashed. They're shortening the training time substantially,
Oh,
and so they're trying to get people in to backfill these positions in commercial aviation as quick as you can. And the way you begin that is you start with general aviation, small planes, light planes is where you learn how to
right.
fly. Yeah.
Well, that does make
So
sense. Yeah.
yeah, and some of these accidents are just completely avoidable.
Yeah.
And a couple of years ago, there was a YouTube star that was flying from Arizona, several other YouTube stars, to Las Vegas for a convention. And he had 10 hours, or I don't even know if he had 10 hours, but he had enough money that he bought a plane. Okay. So at 10 hours is where you usually take your first solo. So you go around the field and you take off and land a couple times to show that you can take off and land successfully,
Yeah.
keep the plane under control. So this guy bought a four-seater plane that you could put in four people, no luggage, or three people with luggage. And in planes, there's something called a weight and balance. So it's like a teeter totter. You don't want to have too much weight in the front of the plane, too much weight in the back. Otherwise, you can't control it. Sort of like overloading a truck where the front wheels of the car come off the ground
Yeah.
or front wheels of the truck. Okay. So he was getting ready to make this flight. And as he got fueled, the fueling guy who was fueling his plane said, you can only have three people in there with luggage. And he said, yeah, yeah, not a problem, not a problem. So somebody else was on the field there, another pilot, and he said, you can only have three people in that plane. And he said, yeah, yeah, not a problem. I'm just going by myself. So as it turns out, he stuck six people in a plane for four
Yeah.
with no luggage. And for the people in the way back beyond the back seat, he threw pillows back there.
Yeah.
So it's as if the laws of physics, aviation don't apply.
Yeah.
So he takes off, gets 75 feet in the air, nosedives, crashes straight down, which is expected for the weight balance.
Yeah. And so, I wonder if this helps explain their attitude towards medicine. Because, I got a bunch of those. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I guess just one of these, but they keep coming. They now, the RFK Jr. at the hearing said he's not going to block vaccine, but now it has come out, of course. Several experts posted for jobs in U.S. health agencies do want to completely ban COVID vaccine, claiming that it causes all these problems it doesn't cause. And I think, again, no research is needed, no actual medicine. All the experts are idiots. And
Yeah.
the story they just made up or saw on Twitter is what matters. It shows the same kind of, contempt for the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wonder if traffic accidents have also had a great increase lately.
Oh, I think so. I think
Yeah,
so.
well,
I,
that
I
would
don't
make
have any
sense.
statistics to back that, but
Yeah,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
would that's an interesting explanation. Anyway, I got some really horrible stuff. When Ukraine, as you know, Trump, I always expected as soon as Trump got in, he would immediately just hand over Ukraine to Putin. And that's what he's doing. But the first thing he's doing is repeating Putin's talking points. So now he claims that Zelensky is a king and canceled elections, none of which is true. Zelensky is popular in Ukraine, and Ukraine's constitution does not allow elections during wartime. And then he said, it's all his fault. He shouldn't have started this war if he didn't have a reasonable chance of winning. So he now thinks that Ukraine started the war. So when Russia invades you, you're supposed to just like give up or something. It makes no sense at all. And the stories have come out about how the Russians are treating Ukrainian female prisoners of war, and the Russians are famous for being absolutely ruthless and being no, so they are raping them, torturing them, parading them naked, and all this stuff, just appalling things. And this reminds me of Trump. You know, Trump, one of his big things in his first term was pardoning American soldiers who committed war crimes. Even when the military generals and such said, no, we have to have discipline in the troops, he said, no, I love it when our soldiers commit horrible crimes against people. He really likes this violence. This is a common theme of fascists. Like he wanted to shoot protesters. He wanted to put razors and alligators in the Rio Grande to catch people trying to swim across. They really like physical violence and hurting people. It makes them feel powerful or something. A very common fascist trick. Anyway, more on
Yeah.
that psychology, like, I'll just ride my airplane or my truck just right into people because I'm the superior race and it makes me feel strong when I'm hurting people. Um, and anyway, so now he's openly coming out and claiming to be a king. Trump has signed a new order expanding his own power, claiming that he now has direct control over the independent agencies, the Federal Election Commission, the Federal Communication Commission, the Federal Trade Commission, and the Securities and Exchange Commission will just operate as dictated by the president. And then he signed another order saying that only the president and the attorney general can interpret U.S. law. So he is now superior, and no court can stop him, and no law, no legal judgment applies to him, just like a king. And then the White House official Twitter account shared a photo of Donald Trump dressed as a king. So this is, the mask is off. He's just openly admitting, I'm the king. I make the king's law. I rule every agency. I can fire anybody, and everybody has to do what I say. And so they're weaponizing the government. And just for him, Kash Patel yesterday, the head of the FBI, who said the purpose of the FBI, in the first place, I'll just burn the whole place down and just make it a monument. But before that, I'll use it to punish my enemies list of 60 people, which are basically all celebrities that have dared to oppose Donald Trump. And I'll make sure and prosecute all of them with the FBI. That's what he's going to do with it. And so people more 7 people quit recently at the Justice Department just over Eric Adams because he was extorting Eric Adams, the mayor of New York City, by threatening him with prosecution and removing the prosecution if he obeys Trump and helps him round up immigrants in New York City. And Denise Chung is another federal prosecutor that just resigned because she was ordered to be open a criminal investigation into a contract that had to do with environmental grants issued during the Biden administration. And she said there is no evidence, and starting this investigation is contrary, is for political purposes, just to harass your enemy, is not acceptable, and resigned. So I remember Nixon did this. Nixon used to use the IRS to investigate his political enemies, and Trump
Right.
wants to go much further. I mean, with the FBI actually. So, I mean, we are moving into the kind of fascism where you jail your political opponents. And that is what the Supreme Court opened the door for. They explicitly asked them during arguments, will it be okay if the president just sends SEAL team to execute his political opponents? And they said, yeah, that'll be fine. So we'll see when this stuff gets to the Supreme Court. So a couple other things. The end of my politics section. It's sort of gruesome. In Utah, they've announced a bill saying that Nazi flags can be used in school, but not rainbow flags, because Nazi flags have historical significance and are appropriately part of a history lesson, but rainbow flags do not have any actual historical significance and are just offensive. So they, again, they're coming out of their shell, no longer feeling any need to hide the fact that they're openly Nazi, which does make sense since Elon Musk is openly a Nazi. And apparently all the Republican voters are completely happy to support a Nazi regime. Um, so this is, the horrible lesson of the last 10 years is that half of the people in our nation, and apparently 90% of the Republican voters, are completely happy to be Nazis. Um, and however, the resistance is rising. Joe Rogan is no longer the number one podcast. The number one, can you guess what the new number one is? I was surprised.
I have no idea.
It's Midas Touch. And I don't know if you
Never,
listen. My,
never heard of it.
Midas Touch is a very angry anti-Trump podcast. It's sort of so angry, I kind of avoid it. It's a little too extreme for me. It's a little too extreme liberal. And they're now the
Hmm.
number one in the country, which means people are getting really mad at Donald Trump and his fascists, and they're happy to listen to a pretty angry voice on the left. Um, and they have a lot of ads, which irritates me, and but they've had quite a lot of good scoops. But they're a very passionate, very liberal, anti-Trump channel, and now they're the number one podcast. And I think this is far more important than cable news or anything. Podcasts reach more people. Joe Rogan reaches really a lot of people. I remember they said Kamala Harris's refusal to go on Joe Rogan is probably what cost her the election. It's extremely influential.
Yeah, yeah, he is definitely influential.
So if the Midas Touch Network is pulled ahead of him, that really strongly indicates a very strong sentiment against the Trump regime. So I think we can probably expect really major Democratic victories in 2 years and 4 years, and that's why I've heard the analysis of the right wingers that are running this saying we really have to do all this fast because we only have 2 years to do all this stuff before the backlash hits. So they're hoping within 2 years that they can cement their position and rig the elections and or cancel the elections and so on to just stay in power after that without having to. Uh, but then they hope they will have crushed all the opposition.
Yeah,
So we'll
yeah,
see. Now,
yeah,
and the only way they can really do it, they can really have a complete conversion of America to a dictatorship, is if they get the military to attack our own citizens. And remember, Trump never was. That was one of Trump's enormous failures in his attempt to be on Adolf Hitler, is he never got the military on his side. And they wouldn't help him last time, and they resisted him. And they're just about to start cutting the military, they say. Doge is going to start moving into the military. I imagine they're just going to alienate the military too. So I don't think he's going to succeed for that reason. He's not actually got the military to help him. We'll see.
So, Sam, there are some similarities that we're seeing from nearly 100 years ago in Europe, aren't we?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
Incredibly similar. I mean, even the fact that he won and then lost and then came back and was much more extreme the second time. Um, the I'm lot within the next year we should if you're playing the exact movie again, we should have Crystal knocked where they start herding the Jews into ghettos, and then they should start firing and jailing professors like us who dare to oppose him. That should be shortly thereafter. We'll see if they get there. I'm thinking they won't get there, not in America. I think the resistance of the courts is going to stop them. And like I say, the strongest thing in America preventing fascism is the free press, which impresses me. We can do this. It's even on YouTube, a Google-owned medium, and they haven't canceled us yet. And Midas Touch is
yeah,
one. There really seems to be a strong tradition of the free press in America, and they haven't been able to crush that. And in Hungary, Orban, the hero of the right, did crush the free press very quickly. He got his oligarchs to buy all the independent media and crush them, and he jailed the journalists that dared to oppose him and made sure that there was nothing but the propaganda press. And that has not happened in America. I mean, half of Americans are happy to watch nothing like garbage like Fox and Newsmax, but half of America watches other things, and they haven't crushed them. So that seems to be one of our traditions that's holding up more strongly than anything else, is the idea of the free press, and it may save us.
yeah. Well, they've tried to go after Wikipedia,
Oh yeah,
right?
oh yeah.
And I don't know where that stands.
I think it's not going to win in court. I mean, the problem is this is what happened to Trump the first time. He tried all this crazy stuff, and every time it got to court, he couldn't actually justify any of his claims about the election or
Yeah,
anything. I mean, the courts have also remained, the lower level courts have actually remained uncorrupted, where you actually have to show up before a judge and actually have some real evidence or you lose. Although the Supreme Court seems completely corrupt. So we'll
yeah,
see.
yeah.
But
Well,
even
that's
even even there, Amy Coney Barrett has surprisingly defended some of America's actual constitutional values. So they may not have a solid majority willing to completely overthrow the Constitution on the Supreme Court, although they did when they declared that the president can break the law with impunity. But I think some of them are uneasy with that. And so the courts may help us, but I think the free press will really help us. Anyway,
yeah, yeah. So here's one, HealthNet Federal Services, HNFS, and its parent company, I believe it's Centene Corporation, have agreed to pay over $11 million to settle allegations that HealthNet certified compliance with cybersecurity requirements under its Defense Health Agency TRICARE contract.
What does that mean?
So that means that they, I got another story along this lines, that they falsely certified their compliance for cybersecurity.
All right, and they were, what did they do? They were a medical provider?
Yeah, so TRICARE is medical for federal government employees, I think military.
Oh,
And so these would be medical records, and they
uh,
falsely certified compliance
oh,
with, I'm not going to say HIPAA, but the laws regarding personal information.
which is what, SOC 2 or something?
No, no, this is healthcare
Yeah.
records.
Yeah, so I don't know what there is besides HIPAA, but there's some compliance regime they had to match, and they falsified their compliance. I bet
Yeah,
that happens all
yeah,
the time.
yeah, yeah,
And did
yeah.
they then get hacked? I guess it wouldn't be in the news otherwise.
Well, there's no mention of being hacked, but
Oh,
just they paid $11 million to settle it. If you got hacked and your medical records have been released, that's your problem.
yeah.
But at least the federal government or yeah, is getting money back.
So somebody caught them just for being non-compliant, even though they didn't get hacked. That's unusual. I mean, how
Wait,
did?
wait, wait, wait. It wasn't that they were non-compliant.
Yeah.
It's they're non-compliant and they falsified records,
Well,
saying that they were compliant.
well, sure, but how did anybody find out?
That I don't have the answer
Yeah, I
for
mean,
you.
because okay, fair enough. Usually, the only way they find out is that you get hacked. Uh, yeah. Anyway,
Well, not always. Sometimes you have somebody on the inside
right.
who spills the
Whistleblower. Yeah.
beans. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
whistleblower.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
And
yeah, go ahead.
so I got the big story, but let's wrap with the big story. How many more do you have?
Oh, I got a bunch of Infosec ones, four or five.
Okay, so do some short ones, and then
Yeah.
we got a big one at the end.
Okay. So Russia has a new phishing campaign, which is pretty clever. They want to read your Signal messages. Now, Signal's an encrypted messenger, but I didn't know this. Signal has a synchronization feature where you can scan a QR code, and then that means you want your image, your messages cloned to another device to join your Signal chat. So they just trick you into scanning that QR code, and then they authorize another device to get a copy of your messages. This reminds me of what I keep warning my cryptography students. Cryptography sounds great, but there is somewhere a location where the message is unencrypted, and you could just steal it there.
Yeah,
And that's
yeah,
the way to get around cryptography. Um, and this one is pretty interesting. Meta has sued a violent extortionist. What this guy did, Idris Kiba, he went on a podcast and bragged about all this, admitting what he was doing. He's a professional when it comes to banning and unbanning Instagram accounts. He runs a service called Unlocked for Life, which is an extortion service, and he makes $600,000 a month. Over 200 people pay him every month to maintain access to their Instagram accounts. What he does is he will just report your account claiming you're violating the platform's terms, and Instagram will ban it. So to prevent, that's how he does it. And so you pay him cash every month to prevent him from doing that. And he claims he can also do it on Twitter, YouTube, TikTok, Snapchat, and Telegram. So that's a pretty interesting scam. I remember this used to be true of Yahoo. All you had to do was make like 5 failed login accounts in Yahoo, and that account would get banned. So you could cancel other people's accounts anytime you wanted to. And it never occurred to me to run an extortion scheme, but that's what he did. And you might have seen this. I know you're the big Microsoft guy. A hacker group called the MAS Project has released a free tool which will activate all your Microsoft software. I haven't tried it yet. Supposedly activate Office and Windows for free.
That's interesting.
I mean, there have always been these. They come and go. They only work for a while, then Microsoft patches them. But
Yeah.
I'm interested in this one because my students have some machines full of malware analysis tools they use, but they're trial versions and they expire and then they'll shut down every hour and otherwise irritate you. So this would make them more useful if it actually works.
Yeah. So, Sam, it's interesting. There's a YouTube video. It's called Dave's Garage, or it's actually a channel, Dave's Garage on
Yeah.
YouTube. And the person who's now retired from Microsoft, who created the activation scheme, has revealed how the activation scheme works
Yeah, which is
and
pretty
how the,
clever. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he goes into complete detail about it. And what's interesting is he needed some padded data. So he needed some filler.
Yeah.
And do you know what he used?
No.
This is pretty funny. He used some code from MS-DOS and he reversed it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's interesting. He had a question about it that he put it out there, and Bill Gates responded back. And Bill Gates, a subscriber, a fan of his.
Yeah.
But he has some very interesting videos on the history of Microsoft. He began by writing software for a Commodore 64.
Yeah. Those were great machines.
Yeah, yeah. All right. What else do you have for us?
I don't know if anybody young watches this channel, but young people have a whole different media diet than older people. And one
Yes.
thing they do is they watch trash like Joe Rogan, where he just babbles for 3 hours about nothing. Another thing they do is watch people do random things on Twitch. I get them occasionally when I teach my classes on Twitch. And so this guy called Hassan Piker is now, they think he might be what the Democrats are looking for. He gets on Twitch and he just spends hours like clicking on tabs and talking about current events and news in a sort of rambling way, sort of like what we're doing here. And it's
Yes.
extremely popular. In 2020, his stream peaked at 230,000 concurrent viewers. Then it went up to 313,000. And he's a relative of the guy that does the Young Turks, which is another far left liberal channel. Anyway, he's a big hit. And they say he might be the left's answer for like Joe Rogan. So I don't know anything about
Huh.
it, but young people do have this different way of consuming news and media now, which I don't understand much, but they really do. And China has announced their own quantum resistant encryption standards. They're having their own contest like NIST, which is pretty reasonable. They also need quantum resistant encryption, and they don't trust the US approved schemes, assuming the NSA has backdoored them, which is not an unreasonable assumption. So
Yeah.
they're making their own. Um, this one's fun. The scientists discovered that there is a specific gene in the human genome that causes us to have this ability to talk with complex speech. And they inserted that gene into mice. And now the mice have a very, very different style of speech, which seems to contain way more information. So that's
Interesting.
I know. I mean, I think speech is the thing that makes humans different than the animals. It's the number one thing. There are animals with opposing thumbs. There are animals with vision like ours and better. The thing we have that's special is language. So, um, and there's a new thing called catalytic computing. Occasionally get these articles about advances in real computer science. This is a theoretical computer science thing. Um, and it turns out, there's P and NP. You've probably heard of them, right? P is the easy
Yes.
problems and NP is the hard problems. Well, there's a subset of P, which are problems that can be solved efficiently with very little RAM. And there's been an argument. Here's a thought for you. Suppose you have a computer and it's not running very fast, and suppose you add a hard drive that is completely full. Will it run better? Obviously not, right? What uses a hard drive that's completely full? Well, it turns out, in some mind-bending way, you can use a hard drive that's completely full, and it makes these programs run much faster. So somehow you modify the data on the hard drive in some way that benefits your program without losing any of the existing data. And they proved this mind-bending thing that adding storage that's full can still be used in some way. And that is called catalytic computing. This hard drive
All
is
right.
used like a catalyst. It's used, but not consumed by the process. And anyway, it's a highly theoretical thing. They're beginning to understand the implications, but this is a step forward in dense, you know, computer science. I thought that was interesting. And the
So that's
last,
in is that Quanta Magazine? I'm just looking up here.
let's see. Yeah, Quantum Magazine. That's it. Yep. Catalytic
Yeah.
computing.
All right. I got to take a look at this.
I
Three
know.
days ago.
I couldn't really understand it, and but I know I have spent a long time trying to understand P versus NP. It's so abstract. It's like group theory. It's like set theory. It's pretty
Yeah.
mind-bending, and this is like a little even more crazy than that. But anyway, the last one I had was kind of interesting. Public libraries have an ebook service to loan ebooks, and it was completely full of AI generated clone that's in slop. And when 404 Media published the investigation, they finally are going to clean up all the automatically AI generated books. This has been a big problem. I've read a lot about that. If you write a book, then people will make like an AI imitation book, and there'll be 10 copies of it on Amazon selling cheaper. Just sort of AI, an endless chain of AI fake imitations of your book. So it's another form of spam. You may remember when Microsoft had a phone, they had a Microsoft phone store, and the only thing that was in there was like 100 fake Adobe PDF readers.
Yeah.
Same
Yeah.
spirit. So bookstores like Amazon are often flooded this way with many, many fake AI generated knockoff books.
So Sam, I got a little piece of trivia about books.
Yeah.
Any idea when the first book written by a fake author occurred, or what the book was?
Well, the Bible is all written by fake authors.
Well, okay, exception for, let's say, first non-religious book.
Okay, because I mean, in ancient history, this was very common that you would just put a famous name on your book to make people read it. Uh,
Well, maybe I should re-ask the
yeah.
question. So there was a very popular book that came out. Then there was a part two to the book that came out that was written by a fake author. And then the real author came out and said, no, 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 that book's a fake. This is my book, or this is part two.
Yeah, I
So
think
that
that's
was,
happened a lot of times. Yeah.
yeah, that was Man from La Mancha.
I've
You ever
heard,
heard of
I
that?
don't, I think I might have heard of a movie with that name, but I don't really know what it is.
Yeah, so Man from La Mancha was the name escapes me. Cervantes was the author who wrote the book. It turned out to be one, I believe, one of the first non-religious books that just
Oh,
turned out to be very popular throughout Europe.
what was that in the
It,
1500s or something?
yeah, yeah, around that time, about
Yeah,
500 years ago.
yeah.
And he ends the story in his book that there's a sword fight going on. And it literally, he raises his sword, and
And then
that's
book
the
ends
end of the
there.
book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then, about a year later, somebody comes up with a book that completes the story. Cervantes waits about 8 years and comes out and writes a book saying, no, 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 no. That book is a fake. I am the real author. Here's the real story.
So this was fan fiction, circa 1500.
Yeah, yeah, fan fiction. There you go.
Or if he was really smart, he would write the fake one and then claim it was a fake just to sell more. That would be another good scam. Oh, the false flag operation. All these things are out there.
Yeah, so I got to remember, I can't remember who wrote Man of La Mancha. Um,
Reminds me of Francis Bacon, right? Who supposedly wrote the Shakespeare plays. That's one of those stories going around. That's the
so
problem.
it was made into a movie in a Broadway play. It was
Yeah.
very good.
Yeah. But I mean, this has been around forever. I mean, when you write something, you could put something else in as the author, and who would ever know? And maybe that would have various benefits. Like
Yeah,
you wouldn't have to get hung for saying something forbidden and things
yeah,
like
yeah.
that.
And maybe I have the book. Maybe I'm mixing up what the book name of the book was, because I'm looking. The play is Man of La Mancha. The book is Man of La Mancha.
Yeah.
Don Quixote of La Mancha by Miguel Cervantes.
Yeah.
So that was the first novel. So a little piece of trivia. I'm not sure if that's exactly true, but
Well, I know all the way back to Plato. This
yeah,
fundamental idea of allowing people to write fiction at all, you could argue you shouldn't allow it. It will just confuse people. It does lead to all these strange problems.
yeah, I got it. So Sam, you got one more? Otherwise,
Nope,
I got the
nope, I got no
final
more.
story
Go
here.
ahead.
All right. So you ever played the lottery?
Not willingly. Other
Not
people have bought
willingly.
lottery tickets and given me to me at a special occasion. I've generally disapproved of it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, here, let me tell you. This is getting interesting. This is out of Texas, and California has a lottery, lottery.com.
We do.
And not too long ago, lottery.com picked up, packed up, moved out of California, went to Texas, the company behind it. All right. So
Someplace where
it
they can be
turns,
even more crooked, I bet.
oh, it wouldn't be more crooked now, would it? So it turns out that the founder of lottery.com was found over a 3 year period to have 142 winning lottery tickets. Imagine that. How could that be? And if that's not good enough, he had two back to back Powerball wins.
Oh, man.
But wait, Sam, it gets better than this.
I thought they would
Turn,
at least have to be a little more subtle than that, you know.
well, I mean, they got away with it for a while. So it turns out also, let's see. I mean, this is a very complex story that's unfolding. But it turns out that there have been stolen lottery tickets, and there've also what appears to be lottery tickets, winning lottery tickets that have been printed after the lottery has taken place.
That would be a whole lot easier.
Yeah, wouldn't it? But wait, Sam, it gets better. So Texas lottery tickets are being sold out of state. They're also being sold to minors, which is illegal. They're also being sold outside of the US. And it looks like there's a company out of Malta that went out. You ready for this? We saw this happen in Europe. They figured out that there was a $95 million jackpot, so they did a bulk ticket purchase and set up a group of investors and spent $25 million in purchasing all the possible lottery tickets.
Oh, you can buy them all for only 25 million?
That's
Well,
that's the
that's a pretty sound investment at that point.
yeah, isn't it? So the question is that illegal?
I would think not.
I would think not
I
either,
mean, I
but
remember years ago, this is how I got them. I had a boss. There was a time for the
yeah,
California law, when the jackpot would rise to a high enough level that it became a logical investment, that the
yeah.
expected return exceeded the investment. So I mean, that does make sense, really.
Yeah, so in England, when the lottery, or when one of the lotteries came about, maybe 20 years ago, there
Yeah.
was a mathematician there that noticed that there was a code on each lottery ticket, and he was able to figure out the code that would match to the winning lottery tickets because he collected all the discarded lottery tickets.
Oh,
I believe he was a mathematician or researcher. He goes to the lottery office and he says, I can predict which lottery tickets are going to win. And they said, no, you can't. And he said, no, I can. So he said, can I buy lottery tickets if I know they're going to win? And they said, sure, go ahead. We
yeah.
sure, like you really know who the lottery tickets
Yep.
are.
There's
So
always a gambler with a system, and they love that. Yeah.
yeah. So it turns out he was right.
Yeah. Occasionally, I've seen them. They are right. There's various, but I mean, the part where they just uh, people who run the system get winning lottery tickets, that's ridiculous and obviously illegal. And you think you would get caught. I mean, that's too extreme.
Well, they did get caught, or yeah, this is now being blown apart. It's
Yeah.
interesting because lottery.com is in California. We've not heard anything in the news, or at least I haven't seen anything about the lottery
And
in
remember,
California.
I remember when that bill passed creating the California lottery and the money was supposed to go to the schools. And
Schools.
every few years, the story comes out saying, gee, somehow no money actually found its way to the schools. That money's all vanishing somewhere.
Well, so Sam, they're paying a lot in advertising.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well,
So anyway, this is really interesting. But what the Texas lawmakers are claiming is that this was all a scam now to launder money.
I know lotteries are used to launder money, even
Yeah.
ones that aren't as obviously crooked as this. It's one common way to launder money. You just buy a lot of tickets and you get about 20% of the money back, and that might be an acceptable loss.
Yeah,
But
that's it,
yeah,
yeah, I could see that. It's better than a 10%. I mean,
yeah,
getting a 10% return.
yeah. So yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah. I mean, lotteries are pretty vile things. That's why you say I never willingly participate in them.
Yeah. So, Sam, it's going to be interesting what's going on. We want less government oversight.
Well, what we're getting is just kleptocracy. We're just going to have everything bought and sold to the highest bidder. Anybody that bribes Trump gets what they want, and they're going to percolate this all the way down. The Department of Justice is just going to be a revenge machine, and Doge is just an extortion scheme. And they're all going to just be this. So we're going to be a corrupt country. Like I remember I had students from Russia that just expected to pay a bribe to cheat on tests and stuff. So
Yeah,
if
yeah,
you, there are societies where you just everybody's on the take, every cop pulls you over, you know there's not a real offense, but you have to pay a bribe or he'll lock you up. You know,
yeah, yeah,
that's where
yeah,
we're headed. That's
yeah.
that's a Republican utopia. So we'll see.
We will see. Yeah,
Yeah. All
yeah.
right.
So anyway, that's for me. It's going to
Yeah.
be interesting
Yeah.
how if this lottery. I mean, I'm surprised. Like I said, it hasn't hit California because lottery.com, same company.
They've always been nothing but a bunch of crooks. I never trusted it a bit. Yeah, yeah. We really shouldn't
All
have had
right.
state lotteries. Anyway, all right.
Yeah.
So that's it for this one, and we'll have another one on Tuesday.
Yeah. Tuesday the 25th.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah.